Hey everyone, it's Marla at Twinstrology. Welcome back. I have a special guest with me today. I want you to welcome Andy Brine of the Soul's Pathway. And we're going to have a little chat today about the archetypes and how the archetypes can help us heal our shadow side. So, hi, Andy, welcome.
Hello, Marla. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited about this conversation with regards to twin flames as well and healing your shadow. So it'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my work, I'm very much connected with the shamanic pathways, but my work at the Soul Path is really helping people get to the soul of who they are as an individual and really understand their spiritual journey at a deeper level. So I created a Soul Pathway process, which is in many ways an evolution from Joseph Campbell's work, so that people can really, gain a deeper perspective of their spiritual journey with relation to where they are now and how they're evolving and transcending. And with relation to archetypes, help us understand our consciousness and how we're showing up in the world in a positive aspects and even the shadow aspects of, each and every archetype.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's more or less what I do.
Archetypes are something I've always had an interest in. I tend to, have in my mind different archetypes that I work with, but they're a little bit different than the archetypes you work with, which are more the Jungian archetypes.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit, like what are the archetypes?
So yeah, I work primarily. Well, I wouldn't say I work primarily with Jungian archetypes, but Jungian archetypes are the ones that I relate to and help me connect with others so that they can relate to their own experience, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
archetypes are very much symbolic in terms of the symbolism of understanding our own consciousness and what is going on within our own minds. So the archetypes that I use are the 12 archetypes from Jung's work. So you've got the innocent, the orphan, the warrior, the caregiver, the seeker, the destroyer, the lover, the creator. And then you've got the magician, the fool, and the sage. And I can't remember, there was one other archetype. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but yeah, I use most of those archetypes. But I also use spirit animals to help people connect with spirit animals, because you could say the animals are very much archetypal in terms of helping us understand the symbolism within them, but they're very much used in a different way, I would say.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit about, well, I guess we should clarify too for people. We all have each of these different archetypes within ourselves in one respect or another.
Yeah. Yeah. They're
And
always present within us. Within different situations, we may operate out of the orphan archetype, where we feel neglected by society or by others. We may have that magician, which is very much alchemical, that wants to create change. And there are different archetypes that operate in different ways. You know.
how about when we're looking at, for example, when we're talking about the twin flame dynamic and we're
Yeah.
looking at the feminine and the masculine energies, do you see that there tend to be particular archetypes that manifest more within the feminine and some more within the masculine that could help us understand each other?
Definitely. I mean, when it comes to archetypes and twin flames, I tend to primarily use the archetypes of the warrior and the caregiver, because they're very much expressive of both the masculine and feminine energy. So I did a course a few years ago, which was all about balancing the masculine and feminine within, which was all about diving into those two archetypes on a deeper level. Because from a conditional aspect, the feminine is very much that loving, is the caregiver archetype, that is the loving, caring mother, wife, and daughter, symbolically. But we all have feminine aspects within ourselves. But what is interesting from this is that conditionally, when we operate from the feminine, we give our loves in very much an altruistic way, where we want to love anybody that crosses our path, and we want to express our love in many different ways. But there's a detriment to that, and there's always a shadow within each and every archetype, and it's how we acknowledge that within ourselves. Because I find within the feminine, when we're showing up with regards to love and relationships, that we can very much sacrifice ourselves within that. We give our love so much that we neglect aspects of receiving it. So we push it away from ourselves, or we try and control situations because we feel this overwhelming sensation of love, you know. Mm. But the warrior on the other side, the warrior is very different. The warrior is, from a conditional aspect, is the patriarchal man who was always the provider for the family, that would bring home the money and things like that. But also, if we look at the masculine in the relationship of twin flames, they're the one that puts on the suit of armor to get to where they want to go, to fight for the life that they want to lead. But what happens with warriors? We all know that warriors are very much proud with who they are. And what does pride get us? Pride gets us putting those walls up, self-preservation. And also at the same time, there's the aspect of feeling scared or even worried about honoring their inner emotions and feelings. And we look at this from a man's perspective, because men in a way are not allowed to express and show their emotions in society, because in the Western world it's frowned upon. Not so much now, that more men are coming out and expressing their emotions and feelings, but we have to learn to do it in a place where we can be strong and not feel judged by being that. And that goes from the aspect of the shadow of the masculine there, and suppressing and repressing those emotions, and neglecting your own love with regards to if it was the feminine aspect of the caregiver, you know.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And there are so many things like that I was thinking about as you were talking, and how each, like we tend to, as twin flames, say, well, I embody the divine feminine, my twin is the divine masculine. But as you are talking, I'm thinking you can take those two and definitely see how we are each embodying those, and how they're mirroring those energies to each other. And another thing that I was thinking about as you were saying that, for example, my father was very much a person who could not get in touch with his emotions at all, yet he was kind of like the provider of the family. And when we talk about my dad, he's passed away now, with my siblings, you know, the one thing that's always said is, well, Dad always provided for us, but could not be there emotionally at all. So kind of that extreme case of what you're talking about.
You know, you say it's extreme, but I feel it's very much present within society, within so many of us, which is a sad reality, because so many of us are afraid to embody and connect with those emotions. And I feel when it comes to the twin flame journey, more than anything else, you know, we spoke about this before the interview, that twin flames have this incredible energy about them. Nothing quite compares to the energy of a twin flame. So whether it's the masculine or feminine energy, both energies, I believe, become so overwhelmed by their connection that they don't really know what to do with it. They're so overcome by emotion that they either operate out of the feminine straight away, so much so that they go all guns blazing towards their twin flame and wanting to express their love. And that, from a huge level, from a conditional masculine level, that wall comes up straight away. I've been taught to to hide away my emotions, not honor them, not feeling them. And it's not the fact that they haven't done that before, but because they were more expressive in the masculine energy, it's like the wall comes up straight away. It's like I can't embrace this energy or embody it. And I think that's quite an important thing to honor, because I think there are aspects, like you said, there's aspects within all of us that embody both energies, isn't it? So.
Well, what strikes me is that um, both are avoiding their emotions in their own way. And for the feminine energy, they may not see that, but this is something that I teach a lot when I'm doing astrology readings for people. It's kind of obvious with the masculine because, like you said, they're putting up these walls and they have been programmed that, a real man. And of course, women can embody this divine masculine and the same traits that we normally prescribe to someone in a male body. So we're not speaking about genders here.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the divine feminine, who is the archetype of the caretaker that you're mentioning, like you would think, well, because I'm so loving, I must be in touch with my emotions. But going back to what I often see in astrology charts is when we want to give love and give love and give love, but not receive love, it's because we're wounded and we've got walls up. And I can't receive love. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give love and shut off my own inside. Does that make sense? Am I describing that right?
Definitely. I would say that's very much true. And I would be completely honest and vulnerable with myself and say that I've operated from that. And it's a challenge when we are so connected with our caregiver roles, and so many of us who are healers, therapists, that are in the role of the caregiver for clients, they're so much consumed by this energy that they don't know what it means to honor a masculine energy that would be more of, I am deserving of love myself. It's time to allow me to receive. And I think we've got to learn to be receivers, but I think people find that, very challenging.
Yeah. I mean, it's something I've struggled with too. And often it's because we're our wounded inner child. Maybe our parents didn't know how to give love to us. So we never learned to receive. But in order to avoid looking at that wound, we'll just project that outwardly.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the shadow is our shadow is formed from our conditioning, whether it's society, culture, religion, values and beliefs passed on to us by our parents, or we've even got shadows of the collective consciousness that become a part of our own reality. But we don't want to look at our parents and say, you are the problem, because they've raised us, they've been our providers, and they've been amazing at doing what they do. But obviously, sometimes they're unconscious to what they do, like we're unconscious to what we do. So when it comes to healing, I think it's really essential that we allow ourselves to see our parents in their wounds, because we can see those wounds within ourselves. Not that they were bad parents or they weren't good people, but if we can acknowledge those wounds, we can also acknowledge aspects of the ancestral patterns that have been passed on to us. And that is what would allow us to heal and grow and step into who we are. So there's aspects of them that are really essential to our growth that we have to acknowledge. I feel,
That's such a good point, Andy. Thank you. And I think that in my own healing, I didn't really have those breakthroughs as far as healing my parental issues until I was able to do that. It was much easier. Like my father's wounds were much more obvious. And so I tended to have more compassion for my father, but my mother's wounds were much more buried within her, not easy to see. And so it took me a lot longer to be able to find that compassion and say, my parents were acting from their own wounded place. But I believe we chose our parents anyways for whatever lessons we needed.
Definitely, definitely. And I think they bring us many blessings. I mean, sadly, there are people that have been through horrific abuses, and they didn't have the childhood. But I think the majority of us can really look at our parents in a way that we can think about them as, not being the ideal role models, let's say, because neither one of us are, but we're all wounded in our own expression of trying to be our best selves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one of the archetypes, that the one that you said you couldn't remember, I think it is the lover, right?
Oh, the lovers. Yeah, yeah.
And so you did a video recently that I really enjoyed. That's why I really wanted to have you on. And you talked about the lover in connection to the twin flame dynamic and our ability to be able to receive love and kind of transforming the energy of the caretaker.
Yeah.
So what can you describe the energy of the lover a little bit?
So the lover archetype. It's said that without love, that the soul doesn't really engage with life itself. And you could say, again, going back to twin flame straight away here, when we connect with our twin flame for the very first time, and we embody this beautiful energy, that unconditional love from such a deep level, there's nobody else that can match that. And I know from speaking with you just before this as well, it's like your twin flame is color and everything else is black and white from your words. It's incredible. And I've found that, when we have this feeling of love on this high vibrational level, that we want to consume it. We want to really embody it in the best of ways. And this is where the lover archetype comes into play, because we want to give love. We want to give love in such a big way that we can feel this love on the highest of levels, in all different ways. But what happens when we start embodying that? We become obsessed with love. We become consumed by it. We often want to control. We often have insecurities. We often have even, sexual obsessions and things like that, because we're so consumed by the love that we're not really honoring the fact that we also need to love ourselves. So it goes back to that caregiver. But when you look at the archetype of the lover and giving that love from a feminine perspective, you giving that love is also you operating from that caregiver role. But you're also wanting to control because you are consumed by this love. But when you come from this caregiver, you give your love as much as you can, and you neglect receiving it. So when you bring those two archetypes together, there are two really prominent wounds that you have to look at. What aspects of these relationships am I trying to control? Coming from the feminine, are there really aspects that I want to control within this relationship? Maybe if I'm reaching out on a constant basis, not realizing that I might be triggering my twin flame. Unconsciously, we could be triggering. I found myself doing that, honestly. And by reaching out and trying to, give this love, I'm only neglecting myself, because I'm not really allowing myself to receive it, because at the same time I'm pushing them away. Mm-hmm. So it's really acknowledging both of those wounds and really seeing what it is within you that needs to heal, so that you can embody this divine love. Mm-hmm. So that you've not got this obsessive nature, but this energy of, I love you, and I'm just going to allow you to be you, because that is what is essential for each and every one of this. And I know you've spoken about it in your videos, but it's about allowing each individual to be the individual, expressive in their own ways.
Mhm.
And I think that's very challenging at times, but it's about how we evolve through these archetypes so that we can see those wounds that we might be projecting outwardly in these relationships. And so that then we can act from a place of higher consciousness of allowing myself to give and receive love, or notice the love in everything, the interconnectedness of each and every one of us,
Mhm.
loving life. Because as we awaken through the lover archetype, what is it that transforms the wound of the lover into that higher place of consciousness? It's learning to love life and all things. So when we learn to love life, our energy is being used in a completely different way. And in many ways, we haven't spoken about it, but our divine mission and purpose. Each and every one of us got to connect with our divine mission and purpose. And does that come through love? In many ways, it really does come through that loving oneself, loving life, and this is my mission. I'm going to be serving this now.
Absolutely, it comes from our passion, and we all need to develop that passion. And that's really a gift of the twin flame, is it awakens us to passion. Like you mentioned, I said earlier, it's like when your twins are around, everything's in color, and when they're not, it's like you're living in black and white. But throughout your journey, you have to learn, how can I bring this color to my life, whether or not that person is there? I have to embody that myself. And to be fair, when we kind of were talking about the feminine and the obsession that can come with the lover, I think it's natural and normal. So, there is a level of obsession that comes, but we hopefully grow out of it eventually. And if we're not growing out of it, then we need to go back and
Yeah.
look at our healing.
Yeah.
But it seems
I-
like the more that you kind of stick into that caregiver, like, let me love you, let me love you, let me love you, the more your twin, if they're embodying the divine warrior archetype, is more like, I can't accept this love.
yeah. And what's interesting about both of these together is, how do we bring them both into union? And this is going back to what I spoke about, the course I did, a few years ago. How does the feminine step into giving and receiving love? Actually, it's quite simple. It's honoring the masculine energy, honoring that warrior energy, going after what you want, but not in a way of going after your twin flame, but stepping into what you really want, into that warrior energy. So the caregiver ascends through the masculine and through that warrior. And what's interesting is the warrior does exactly the same. How does the warrior ascend their consciousness and out of these wounds? The only way is through the feminine, through that caregiver, loving themselves, honoring their wounds, and allowing themselves to be vulnerable. So they rise together, but it's acknowledging both of those wounds as well at the same time.
And that's so what's happening right now, because the divine feminine is ready to embody that self-love. And in doing that, the masculine is beginning to want to take off that armor. It's a burden to carry that armor around like that.
It is. I mean, they said many years ago in medieval times that warrior, the armor was so heavy that, I mean, after a day's work, they had to have rest. They had to have a good bit of rest, didn't they? So,
So, Andy, is there a way to help us see what our archetype is and help us kind of work through that archetype? Let's say I'm the caregiver. Is there a way for me to help recognize that in myself, and how do I transcend it into the higher aspect?
So I've got this archetypal assessment that I use, that helps us identify which archetypes we're more dominantly expressing, which is really, really useful. But what I find is more useful than anything else is really simply being honest with ourselves and being conscious of how we operate in the world. Because if we're operating all of these archetypes at different times, then yes, we can acknowledge those wounds, and there are many tools that you can acknowledge these wounds. I can send some, workbooks out to look at the positive aspects of each archetype and the negative aspects, or the shadow aspects, I should say, more so.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really acknowledging how we really show up in situations, and being conscious of that. So me reaching out to you, and maybe I might have triggered you for some reason or another, really reflecting upon that and thinking, how am I operating in this situation? Am I operating out of some of my shadow aspects? And maybe if I can look at different archetypes, I can acknowledge what that archetype is and what wound needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's really about being conscious of how we show up in situations within our lives, and then we can begin looking at how we can transform them.
Mm-hmm. And maybe being in touch with our emotions might go along with that, as far as helping us access our inner honesty
Yeah.
about where we're at with things.
Honesty is the best policy, and emotions. Yeah, I think emotions are the signposts for healing and understanding and growth. I think they're fantastic. Yeah.
So, like we talked about the masculine, having a difficult time accessing their emotions.
Yeah.
And, as we just mentioned, that's such an important part of our growth.
Mm-hmm.
Any tips there, like how you talked a little bit about the warrior transforming.
Yeah, I think the warrior transforms through the feminine. So it's really learning to honor the emotions within you, but really allowing yourself to feel into those emotions and being vulnerable with yourself. I mean, that suit of armor is very present within all of us in many different ways. We look at our shadow, and our shadow is very much unconscious to us, it's hidden from us. But if we allow ourselves to truly see, then we can awaken, because then we can see the wounds and those aspects of ourselves that have been hidden away for years. But it really starts with our honesty and transforming through that. But I did a video a while ago, and probably about a month ago now, actually, which was about the masculine awakened through the feminine,
Mm-hmm.
and spiritually awakened through the feminine. And I think this is where many men are losing themselves, and many people in the masculine energy are losing themselves, because they've been so connected with this masculine energy that through awakening, this feminine energy is coming through, and they don't know what that feels like. It's very foreign to them. So it's how do we begin connecting with those emotions and those feelings, and honoring, the wholeness of who we are. As I speak about, our soul as an individual is our ego, ourself, and our shadow. So it's looking at our conditioning, reflecting about what conditions have made who we are as individuals. What is driving us at our unconscious level to live the life that is in accordance to how we feel inside. And what are those shadow aspects that are hidden away that we need to acknowledge, so that we can feel this sense of wholeness and unification with ourselves,
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, thank you so much. I really want to have you back on to talk more about this, and to talk more about some of the different aspects, like the sage and the magician, and that sort of thing would be really fun. And
That'd be-
I think you mentioned you have an oracle deck that might be coming out soon regarding the archetypes.
yeah, my oracle deck is very new, really. It's in the early stages, or it's almost complete, really, but in the early stages of fully being released. But it's all about really connecting with your spiritual journey and where you are. And also, I bring in archetypes and spirit animals, but looking at the archetypes, if you've pulled, the archetypal cards, it helps you connect with the consciousness of what is coming through to you in order to heal, learn, and grow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to get mine. I'm sure that they'll be helpful in readings.
Yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to them, because I think when we look at our own personal journey, I think for me, what I love about the soul pathway process, and I was speaking with a client about it the other day, spirituality is amazing. There's so many different aspects of spirituality we can look at. And we can also get lost in spirituality. And for me, when I first looked at the work of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, I studied it for many, many years. There's nothing that brought me greater clarity than Joseph Campbell's hero's journey and understanding my spiritual journey. But then when I looked at that for myself, I realized Joseph Campbell's work, however phenomenal it is, we've shifted and transcended our own consciousness collectively and individually. So that's where I brought the soul pathway process out, because it was helping us understand our spiritual journey at that deeper level, but with that greater clarity. And for me, I feel that there is that missing link within the spiritual community at times where we can get lost on our spiritual journey. But in many ways, the soul pathway is helping us find our way home within the different phases of our journey, so that we can be content with where we are now in our forever growing consciousness.
And you do, just to make it clear for people, you do work with them and do sessions on helping them with these things.
Yeah, I do soul pathway mentoring, which is really helping people clarify who they are and what it is they do. But more so, my work is all about healing the shadow. I regard myself as a shadow worker nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the shadow is the pathway to love, because I think all the shadow is those unloved aspects of ourselves. And I remember reading a fantastic post on Facebook, and I'll share it with you quickly, because for me it encapsulates what the shadow is all about and what healing is all about. There was this man on the train. He was very angry and aggressive and quite intimidating to the other people that were on the train. And he was verbally abusive as well. And there was this old lady that was quite close by him, and she reached out her hand, and she grabbed the man's hand very tightly. And in those moments, the angry man started to calm down and relax, until he burst out into tears, completely burst out into tears. And when the old lady got off the train, there was another lady approach her. She said, "Why did you reach out to the man?" And she said, "Well, I'm a mother, and all he wanted to do is be loved." And I thought, wow, I was blown away by that, because what does our shadow want to do? Our shadow just wants to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
It just wants to be accepted and appreciated. And when we can truly love those darker aspects of ourselves, then we can truly be who we are and love the wholeness of our being, rather than just the lighter aspects.
Yeah. And until we do that, we're acting out, right? Like that angry man. That's all our shadow knows how to do to get our attention.
Yeah, very true. It's a shame that we go through that, but I think we all go through the numbing aspects of our journey as well, and it's okay to acknowledge those aspects of numbing. What is it that we're numbing ourselves from, so that we can grow? Okay.
So tell us how we can find you to get more information about you, Andy.
Got my website, which is awakenyoursoulpathway.co.uk, and you can find out more about myself and my work on there. And I've got free clarity calls where you can just connect with me, and we can have a chat about where you are on your spiritual journey as you really embrace the wholeness of who you are. So it'd be a pleasure to connect with you all.
Okay, thank you so much. Great information, and please come back again.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's been a real pleasure, and I love this conversation. And twin flames is challenging to talk about at times, but I think everybody who's on the journey, needs wisdom from all these different areas in order to get through it. So it's fantastic.
Yes, definitely. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon.